The story takes place in a peaceful suburban neighborhood where everything seems perfect. James Walters, a successful businessman, lives with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 kids in a large, beautiful home. From the outside, they look like the ideal family, with a luxurious lifestyle and a seemingly happy life. The house is always spotless, and Sarah has hired a housemaid, Isabella, to help with the daily chores. Everything appears perfect, but there's a dark secret hiding within this family. James is having an affair with Isabella, and it's about to tear their world apart. James is a wealthy, confident businessman who seems to have it all: success, a loving family, and respect from everyone around him. He's tall, handsome, and always dressed sharply. While James seems to be a perfect husband, he's secretly involved in an affair with Isabella, their housemaid. He's obsessed with her and willing to risk everything to keep their relationship going, even though he still loves his family. Sarah is James's devoted wife. She's a caring mother and a supportive partner who manages the household and takes care of their children. She trusts James completely and believes their marriage is strong. Unaware, Sarah has no idea about the affair. She's content in her life and grateful for Isabella's help around the house, never suspecting that the young housemaid is involved with her husband. Isabella is the housemaid, a beautiful young woman hired by Sarah a year ago. She has long, dark hair, and her quiet and polite nature makes her seem innocent. While she's good at her job, Isabella is having an affair with James. She enjoys the gifts and attention James gives her, but she doesn't truly love him. She's more interested in gaining a better life and sees James as her way to get that. She has no loyalty to Sarah and is secretly pushing James to leave his wife. Isabella had been working for the Walters household for nearly a year. Hired by Sarah to help manage the home, she was young, energetic, and strikingly attractive. At 25, her lively personality and charming smile stood in contrast to the more reserved and serious demeanor of Sarah. For James, a 40-year-old businessman, the monotonous routine of his life had left him feeling restless. Though he loved Sarah and their children, something about Isabella stirred emotions in him that he hadn't felt in years. It started innocently enough, a casual conversation in the kitchen, while Isabella prepared dinner, or a brief moment of eye contact while she cleaned the living room. But as the days passed, those brief exchanges grew in frequency. James would compliment her on her appearance, mentioning how radiant she looked that day. Isabella, flattered, would smile and lightly touch his arm, igniting a spark between them. At first, neither acknowledged the underlying tension, but the more they interacted, the more the innocent moments of conversation morphed into flirtation. James began finding reasons to be around Isabella when Sarah wasn't present. If Sarah left to run errands or take the children to their extracurricular activities, James would linger in the house. What started as friendly banter quickly escalated into suggestive comments and subtle touches. One afternoon, while Sarah was out shopping, James found himself alone with Isabella in the kitchen. She brushed past him, their hands grazing each other, and that was all it took to set things in motion. A shared glance, a soft word, and before either could resist, James leaned in and kissed her. That kiss marked the beginning of their affair, a secret relationship fueled by the forbidden thrill of what they were doing. From that day forward, James and Isabella began meeting in secret whenever Sarah wasn't home. Their encounters became bolder, with stolen moments in the hallway, quiet embraces behind closed doors, and late-night rendezvous when the house was still. James felt invincible, certain that Sarah would never suspect anything. He kept his phone locked, avoided suspicion, and made sure their texts and calls were discreet. The two lovers often met in the Walters' own home, making it even riskier. When Sarah was out, taking the kids to school or running errands, Isabella would meet James in the upstairs bedroom or the living room. James, always careful to clean up any traces of their time together, felt a rush from the danger of it all. They even developed a code, speaking in cryptic phrases and knowing glances when others were around. James couldn't help but feel exhilarated by the secrecy, by the idea that he was getting away with something so scandalous right under his wife's nose. Isabella, in turn, enjoyed the luxury James provided. From the lavish gifts he started buying her jewelry, designer clothes, to the promises he made about a future they could share. As the weeks passed, James became more and more invested in his relationship with Isabella. He showered her with expensive gifts, taking her on secret trips and weekends away when Sarah thought he was away on business. The affair wasn't just physical for James. He had convinced himself that he had fallen for Isabella. The youthful allure, her free-spirited nature, and the excitement of being with someone so different from his wife made him blind to the potential consequences. James began promising Isabella that he would leave Sarah for her. He talked about moving out, buying a new house for them, and starting a new life. Isabella played along, enjoying the attention and wealth, but deep down, she had no real desire to see James divorced from his wife. For her, the affair was more about enjoying the perks of being with a wealthy man than truly building a future together. But she kept James wrapped around her finger, manipulating his emotions and convincing him to stay committed to their secret relationship. The once casual affair had now turned into something more serious. James started taking more risks. He would cancel important business meetings just to spend a few hours with Isabella. He was constantly thinking of her, daydreaming about their future together, all while hiding his tracks from Sarah. As the passion between James and Isabella intensified, they grew careless in their secrecy, but James remained convinced that his secret was safe. In his mind, leaving Sarah seemed inevitable. He just needed the right moment to tell her. What James couldn't foresee, however, was that the tangled web of lies and betrayal was slowly closing in on him, with dire consequences waiting around the corner. At first, Sarah Walters dismisses the subtle changes in her husband James's behavior as a result of work stress. However, over time, the signs become too frequent and concerning to ignore. James starts coming home later than usual, claiming he's stuck at the office with meetings or urgent client calls. Sarah tries to believe him, but the frequency of his excuses raises red flags. He used to share stories from his workday, but now he avoids conversation about it altogether, offering vague explanations instead. At home, James becomes distant and distracted, often glued to his phone, receiving mysterious texts that he quickly hides from view. He steps out of the room whenever his phone rings, explaining them away as work-related. Sarah's instincts tell her that something is off, but she convinces herself that she's overthinking it until she notices a change in Isabella, their housemaid. Once chatty and warm, Isabella now keeps a noticeable distance from Sarah, avoiding eye contact and keeping interactions strictly professional. What Sarah finds most unsettling is the way James and Isabella seem to be in the same room more often than before, yet both act as if they're strangers. Sarah becomes increasingly uneasy. While James has always been affectionate, his recent coldness, combined with Isabella's aloof behavior, feels too synchronized to be coincidental. Sarah's suspicions grow stronger, and she can no longer shake the feeling that James is hiding something. Her mind races with possibilities, but she refuses to jump to conclusions without proof. Determined to uncover the truth, she decides to quietly investigate. She starts by paying closer attention to James's movements and habits. When he comes home late, she casually asks about his day, subtly trying to gauge his reactions. She notices the tension in his answers, and the nervous way he checks his phone. Late one evening, while James is showering, Sarah seizes the opportunity to check his phone. Her heart races as she scrolls through his recent messages, but she finds nothing unusual, only work emails and text exchanges with colleagues. She wonders if she's imagining things, but a nagging voice in the back of her mind tells her that James is being more careful than she anticipated. She begins to observe Isabella as well, watching for any clues in her behavior. Isabella's reluctance to make eye contact, her abrupt exits from the room when Sarah enters, and the way she lingers when James is nearby all fuel Sarah's suspicions. It feels as if there's a secret language between James and Isabella, a tension she can't quite place, but it's enough to make Sarah even more determined to find answers. Sarah's persistence pays off one fateful afternoon. James leaves his phone on the kitchen counter before heading out for a supposed business meeting. Seizing the chance, Sarah quickly unlocks his phone, her hands trembling. As she scrolls through his messages again, she stumbles upon a hidden folder of deleted texts, a feature James must have used to conceal his tracks. Her stomach drops as she reads the incriminating messages between James and Isabella. The texts are intimate and damning, filled with flirtatious exchanges, secret rendezvous, and worst of all, plans for the future. Isabella talks about their future together, asking when James will finally leave Sarah. There's a message from James telling Isabella that he'll take care of everything soon, and she won't have to worry about Sarah anymore. The chilling implication of his words sends Sarah into a state of shock. It's not just an affair. There's something much darker unfolding, and her very life could be at risk. Sarah drops the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. The man she thought she knew, the man she built a life with, was not only betraying her with their housemaid, but also plotting something sinister behind her back. She's devastated, yet paralyzed by fear, unsure of what to do next. Confronting James could be dangerous, but staying silent feels equally perilous. In that moment, Sarah's world shatters. The trust she once had is gone, replaced by a horrifying realization that the life she's known is built on lies, and those lies may soon turn deadly. The afternoon sunlight poured through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of Sarah's recent baking endeavor. The scent of chocolate chip cookies wafted through the air, yet the warmth of home felt suffocating. Sarah's heart raced as she clutched her phone. The incriminating text messages burned into her mind. She had spent the morning replaying the words over and over, her stomach churning with betrayal and anger. When James walked through the door, Sarah stood rigidly in the kitchen, her arms crossed, the phone hidden behind her back. The sound of his shoes on the tile made her pulse quicken. "Hey, love." "I'm home," he called, oblivious to the storm brewing in his wife's heart. "James, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but strained. She stepped closer, finally revealing the phone, her face a mask of hurt and fury. "I found these messages between you and Isabella." James's expression shifted from confusion to panic. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, backing away slightly, as if trying to escape the confrontation. "Don't deny it. I can't believe you would do this to me, to our family." Sarah's voice cracked, and she fought back tears. "You promised me fidelity, love, and loyalty. And now I find out you're having an affair with our housemaid." James's face reddened as the weight of the confrontation pressed down on him. "Sarah, listen, it's not what you think," he pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone. "Not what I think," Sarah interrupted, her voice rising. "You think I'd be here if I didn't have proof? I have the texts, James. I can see how you've been lying to me. You think I'm blind?" James clenched his fists, struggling to maintain composure. "I made a mistake. It meant nothing. I swear, I love you, Sarah. This was just a phase. I was confused. Confused? Sarah's voice trembled with disbelief. You've been lying to me for months. What kind of marriage is built on lies and betrayal? As the argument escalated, the kitchen filled with the tension of their shattered relationship. The cookies sat forgotten, a symbol of the warmth and love that had once flourished in their home. You need to understand it just happened, James shouted, his frustration spilling over. I didn't plan for this. Sarah's heart ached, but the anger ignited a strength she didn't know she possessed. You don't get to just brush this off. This isn't some trivial mistake. This is my life you're messing with. How could you do this to me? To our children? I'll fix it. I can fix everything, he replied, but his words felt hollow. Sarah could see the cracks in his façade, the fear of losing everything finally breaking through. Fix it? How? By lying more. You think I can just forget this? I can't believe I ever trusted you. She felt the tears streaming down her cheeks, hot and bitter. You need to leave, James. I can't even look at you right now. James's eyes widened, and for a brief moment he looked lost. Where will I go? He asked, his bravado fading. Figure it out. Just get out, Sarah shouted, her voice cracking. As James stormed out of the house, Sarah felt the weight of their shattered life pressing down on her. The door slammed shut, echoing like a gunshot in the stillness of the house. She collapsed onto a chair, grief and rage battling within her. Meanwhile, at a nearby cafe, Isabella sat at a corner table, scrolling through her phone. She had watched the confrontation unfold from a distance, her heart racing with excitement. James had finally confronted his wife. It was a crucial turning point in their plan. As he arrived, visibly shaken and desperate, she could see the anger and guilt battling in his eyes. James, you look awful, Isabella said with a fake concern, gesturing for him to sit down. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I saw Sarah's face. You have to be ready to cut ties completely. You can't go back now. I don't know what to do, Isabella, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. She's furious. She wants me out, and I don't want to hurt her. Isabella reached across the table, her hand resting on his. You can't think about her anymore. You have to focus on us. This is our chance to be happy together, free from her control. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel alive. James hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his features. But what if the kids? Isabella cut him off, her tone sharp. What about them? You think staying in that miserable marriage is good for them? They'll be fine. Kids are resilient. They'll adjust, especially if you're happy. Her words echoed in his mind, planting seeds of doubt about his life with Sarah. Isabella's seductive charm wrapped around him, urging him to push through the discomfort and embrace a new future. You just have to take that leap, she continued, her voice smooth and alluring. Once you're free from her, we can build a life together, one that's ours. As James listened, he felt the heaviness in his chest begin to lift. The intoxicating idea of freedom, of a fresh start with Isabella, clouded his judgment. He nodded slowly, her influence wrapping around him like a warm blanket. You're right. I can't keep living in fear of what Sarah will do. Exactly. You need to make a choice, James. It's time to be brave, Isabella encouraged, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and anticipation. James felt the last remnants of his loyalty to Sarah waver, driven by the allure of Isabella's promise. With each word she spoke, the distance between him and his wife grew wider, pushing him deeper into Isabella's web of manipulation. James sat alone in his dimly lit office, surrounded by a mountain of paperwork that remained untouched. The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the room, but it did little to soothe his restless mind. Each page he attempted to read felt like a weight pressing down on him, reminding him of the burdens he carried. Torn between the stability of his family life and the intoxicating allure of his affair with Isabella, he found himself spiraling deeper into turmoil. At home, the loving, supportive wife he had married, Sarah, was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life. Her laughter, which once brought him comfort, now echoed painfully in his mind. He was struck by how easily he had allowed himself to become entangled in a web of deceit, and each stolen moment with Isabella intensified his feelings of guilt and shame. In the soft glow of his desk lamp, he replayed their encounters in his mind, the way Isabella's eyes sparkled with mischief, her laughter that danced in the air, the thrill of being with someone so young and full of life. Their meetings had started innocently enough, but now they were filled with passionate embraces and whispered promises, each moment more intoxicating than the last. Yet, alongside the exhilaration was an ever-growing dread that wrapped around his heart like a vice. The internal conflict raged within him like a tempest. On one hand, he was a devoted husband and father. On the other, he was a man lost in desire. When he lay beside Sarah, who slept soundly next to him, he felt a mix of affection and resentment. How could he betray her so deeply? The thought of Sarah discovering the truth sent shivers down his spine. The love they had built seemed to evaporate with each affair-filled night, leaving behind a cold, harsh reality. It was during one of their late-night rendezvous that Isabella made her chilling suggestion. "If you truly love me, you'll do what needs to be done," she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. The words lingered in the air, heavy with implications. The idea of eliminating Sarah, while terrifying. Free from the chains of his double life, he could embrace a new beginning with Isabella, if only he could muster the courage to follow through. Days turned into a blur of stolen moments and desperate secrecy. As they met in the secluded corners of the house, the adrenaline coursed through their veins, mixing with the dread of what they were considering. "We need to be smart about this," Isabella urged, her tone calm yet determined, like a chess master strategizing her next move. "Timing is everything. We can't afford to slip up." James listened, his heart pounding as Isabella outlined their plan with a cold, calculating precision that sent chills down his spine. She spoke of ensuring there were no witnesses, crafting a timeline that would keep them safe. "Late at night is best," she insisted, her eyes sparkling with a dangerous excitement. "She'll be asleep, and no one will hear a thing. Just think about it, James. Once she's gone, we can finally have the life we deserve." The prospect of a future with Isabella was intoxicating, yet he felt the weight of his conscience pressing down on him. Each detail of the plan sent waves of guilt crashing over him, but the allure of freedom from Sarah's loving embrace kept drawing him in. The notion that he could escape the confines of his life and the responsibilities that bound him began to consume his thoughts. He felt like a puppet caught in a sinister game, his strings pulled taut by Isabella's relentless persuasion. After several days of planning, they settled on a night when the children would be at a sleepover. James felt a twinge of guilt at the thought of leaving them, but Isabella's voice drowned out his hesitations. "You need to be decisive. This is your chance," she urged, her determination igniting a flicker of resolve within him. As the day approached, James experienced a whirlwind of emotions. The anticipation of their plan filled him with excitement, but it was laced with dread. He began to second-guess himself, picturing Sarah's face and imagining the horror that would unfold. But each time he spoke to Isabella, Her unwavering confidence and seductive charm pulled him deeper into the abyss of his choices. The night finally arrived, cloaked in darkness, amplifying the gravity of James's decision. He drove the kids to their friend's house, each mile feeling heavier than the last. The closer he got to home, the more the reality of what he was about to do pressed down on him like an iron weight. The streets were eerily quiet, as if the world itself held its breath in anticipation. When he finally returned home, the house was engulfed in silence. The soft glow of the moonlight spilled through the windows, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, reflecting the chaos within him. As he moved through the familiar rooms, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him, a reminder of laughter, family dinners, and moments of happiness. It was almost enough to make him turn back, but Isabella's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to complete the task at hand. James stood outside their bedroom, heart racing as he stared at the door. He could hear the gentle sounds of Sarah's breathing, a soothing rhythm that felt like a lullaby meant to calm him. He felt a twinge of doubt, a flicker of love for the woman who had been his partner for so long. Was this truly the answer? But the thought of a life with Isabella, free from the burdens of deceit, gripped him like a vice. Summoning his courage, he pushed the door open, the creaking hinges breaking the silence of the night. He moved toward the bed, his breath catching in his throat, as he took in the sight of Sarah, peaceful and unaware of the horror about to unfold. He knelt beside her, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum, drowning out the voice of reason that screamed for him to stop. With trembling hands, he picked up the pillow, his heart racing as he prepared to smother her. The weight of his decision crashed over him like a tidal wave, mixing adrenaline with fear. He leaned down, pressing the pillow over Sarah's face, feeling her body thrash beneath him for a brief moment, the warmth of her flesh contrasting sharply with the coldness of his actions. "Just do it," he whispered to himself, closing his eyes against the surge of emotions, threatening to overwhelm him. As he pressed down harder, time seemed to stretch into eternity. He could almost hear the echo of her laughter, the softness of her touch, and it felt like a betrayal of everything they had built together. Isabella stood in the shadows, watching intently, her eyes glinting with a mix of excitement and anticipation. She had promised him freedom, and now she watched him struggle with the finality of their plan, reveling in the chaos they had created together. As the last traces of life slipped from Sarah's body, James felt a chilling emptiness settle over him, a dark realization of what he had just done. The silence that followed was deafening. James withdrew, panting as he let the pillow drop from his hands. The gravity of his actions crashed down on him, flooding him with guilt and remorse. But Isabella, ever composed, stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, her whispering voice grounding him as she assured him they would get through this together. In that moment, James realized that the line between love and betrayal had been irrevocably crossed, and there was no turning back. After the brutal act, a chilling silence envelops the Walters' home. James stands frozen in the dim light of the bedroom, his heart racing. He looks at Sarah, her peaceful face forever altered by his actions. Panic surges through him as he realizes the magnitude of what he has done. The room feels suffocating, the air heavy with the weight of their shattered lives. James turns to Isabella, who has been watching him with an unsettling calmness. "We need to make it look like an accident," he whispers, his voice trembling. Isabella nods, her demeanor eerily composed. Together, they quickly set to work. They move Sarah's body from the bed, positioning it on the floor near the nightstand, as if she had fallen out of bed in a tragic mishap. They make it look as though she had lost her balance and hit her head on the corner of the furniture. James hastily wipes away any signs of a struggle, tossing aside anything that might incriminate them. He notices a half-empty glass of wine on the dresser and quickly spills the remaining contents on the carpet, crafting a narrative of a drunken accident. They also remove any personal belongings that could hint at the true nature of the evening, such as the clothes they had worn earlier in the day. With the scene set, James takes a deep breath and dials emergency services. He feigns distress, his voice cracking as he reports, "My wife, she's unresponsive. I think she's fallen." The operator's calm demeanor contrasts sharply with his frantic tone, but he keeps his composure, knowing the importance of staying collected. Within minutes, the police and paramedics arrive. James, visibly shaken, watches as they rush into the house. Isabella stands beside him, her expression betraying no sign of the horror they have just committed. In the days that follow, the reality of Sarah's death begins to settle in. The news of her passing spreads through the neighborhood, leaving everyone in shock. Friends and family reach out to James, offering condolences and support, but he finds it increasingly difficult to keep up appearances. James's initial relief at having escaped the immediate consequences quickly transforms into a crushing weight of guilt. Each time he closes his eyes, he sees Sarah's face, her warm smile, her laughter, and the way she cared for their family. His mind is a prison, replaying the moment of the murder over and over, taunting him with the horror of his actions. One night, while lying in bed, he feels the air grow cold, and suddenly he sees a vision of Sarah standing at the foot of the bed, her eyes filled with sadness and betrayal. She whispers, "Why, James?" The haunting image jolts him awake, his heart pounding in terror. He sits up, sweat trickling down his back, trying to shake off the memory of her ghostly presence. In stark contrast to James's torment, Isabella seems unaffected by the tragedy they've caused. She flits about the house, rearranging furniture and planning their future as if nothing has happened. She often brings up their plans to leave town, to start anew without the burden of Sarah's memory. Isabella insists they must stay focused, reminding James that any signs of remorse could arouse suspicion. "You can't show weakness," she says, her tone sharp. "You need to be strong for us. We have a future to look forward to." Her words chill him, a stark reminder of the depths of her ambition and the extent of their betrayal. As the days stretch into weeks, James becomes increasingly paranoid. Every phone call, every knock at the door sends him spiraling to a frenzy of worry. He fears the police will discover the truth, that they'll uncover the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. He begins to isolate himself from friends and family, avoiding gatherings and turning down invitations. He can't bear the thought of facing anyone who might see through his charade. Instead, he spirals deeper into his guilt, contemplating the finality of his actions and the irreversible loss of his family. One evening, while sitting alone in the dark, he hears a noise outside. His heart races as he jumps to the window, convinced someone is watching him. He sees nothing, but the fear clings to him like a shadow. "I can't go on like this," he mutters, feeling the walls closing in around him. As the weight of his actions bears down, James grapples with the reality that he may never escape the consequences of his choices. He is trapped in a web of deceit, guilt, and the haunting memories of the life he once cherished. Meanwhile, Isabella remains a constant reminder of his betrayal, her ambitions now intertwined with his dark past. As the initial shock of Sarah's death settles, the local police begin their routine investigation into what appears to be a tragic accident. However, something feels off. The circumstances surrounding her death, an apparently healthy woman found dead in her sleep, raise red flags among the detectives. Detectives interview family, friends, and neighbors. Many mention how vibrant Sarah was, questioning how she could have suddenly died. During these interviews, James presents himself as a grieving husband, yet his emotions seem rehearsed, prompting further scrutiny from the detectives. Detectives start to notice discrepancies in James's account of the night Sarah died. He claims he was working late at the office, but his co-workers reveal he left work early, further raising their suspicions. The police dig deeper into the couple's background, uncovering Sarah's quiet but growing suspicion about James's fidelity, which leads them to believe there might be more to the story. Forensic experts are called to analyze the scene of Sarah's death. They discover traces of a substance that could indicate foul play, contrasting with James's assertion of an accidental death. The autopsy reveals Sarah had defensive wounds, suggesting she had struggled before her demise, contradicting James's narrative that she died peacefully in her sleep. As detectives press on, they confront James with their findings, which he struggles to explain. The mounting evidence puts him on edge, revealing cracks in his façade. The once confident businessman now appears anxious and agitated. Sensing James's growing unease, Isabella tries to downplay his fears, assuring him that everything will be fine if they stick to their story. She reminds him of their future together, but James's guilt is palpable. He begins to worry that their secret might unravel, and that the police could soon discover the truth about their affair and the murder plot. In the days that follow, James isolates himself more, avoiding conversations with Isabella. He becomes increasingly paranoid, seeing shadows where there are none, haunted by visions of Sarah. The weight of his guilt becomes unbearable, and he starts to question if Isabella is really the ally she claims to be. After a particularly tense confrontation with Isabella, where she attempts to manipulate him into remaining silent, James feels the walls closing in. The pressure from the ongoing investigation and his deteriorating mental state lead him to a breaking point. In a moment of clarity, James decides that he cannot live with the burden of his actions any longer. He approaches the police station, his heart racing but resolute. Inside, he confesses to the murder, detailing how he had smothered Sarah and how Isabella had manipulated him into believing it was the only way out of their situation. As he recounts the events, he spills everything: the affair, the planning, and Isabella's role in convincing him to take such drastic measures. James's confession unveils a web of lies and betrayal that sends shockwaves through the community. The detectives record his statement, piecing together the chilling narrative of how love turned deadly. The confession leads to Isabella's arrest. Courtroom is filled with reporters and community members, all eager to hear the details of the shocking case. During the trial, James's emotional breakdown reveals the true tragedy of his choices. As evidence is presented, including text messages and witness testimonies, the story of their twisted love affair and the brutal murder unfolds, captivating the public's attention and leading to discussions about the dark side of betrayal. The case garners national media attention, sparking debates about infidelity, trust, and the consequences of deception. The revelations serve as a grim reminder of how passion can turn to tragedy, forever altering the lives of those involved.